About 4 years ago, Debbie and I started talking about the idea of creating a Meyer Institute to preserve her legacy and promote her ideas about social justice and democracy for perpetuity. We made up a menu of different ideas of what the Institute would stand for and what the projects would be. After showing it to several foundations, and people said, focus first on Debbie's papers and her archives. So that's what we did, and we arranged a partnership. I work at Harmony Education Center in Bloomington, Indiana, and we arranged a partnership with Indiana University and their archival library, the Lilly Library, and then we were able to get grants to bring Debbie's papers to Bloomington, Indiana, to start a progressive school archives.
So here we are. Just to sense this crowd, if you started teaching in the 1950s, could you stand up? Oh, I know, it's a little embarrassing. But okay, 50s and 60s. 50s and 60s. I first started in the 60s as a substitute teacher in Chicago, and I only was going to do it for a few years to make a little extra money, and here I am 50 years later or something, and still wishing I was back in the classroom. And I hope that once in a while, I think, and that's what's, I wish there were more. Half of this crowd was people who plan to be teachers, because it is sometimes hard for me to encourage the young to go into our profession, if we want to call it a profession, and yet it's crucial. And so I just want to thank you all for joining me today. Nancy Mann said to me in the hall, you know, I've gone to heaven this morning. We don't need a conference at all. I've already gone and seen everybody. And it is true that I was thinking out in the hallway there that we probably should cancel the rest of the day. That it just, it's so wonderful. And there are even some people in this audience who were students of Central Park East and Central Park East Secondary School. And I don't know how many, but there are a few. And is there anyone else who is a student of any of the sponsoring organizations? Stand up, too. So, and there are people here I haven't seen in 20, 30 years, and that I honor so much being able to see you all again. It may not be the oldest person in the room, but, you know, I come close to it. And there's not anything, it's wonderful to see how many places that we started 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago that go back to Herb and Ann's Resource Center, they go back to Lillian Weber's City College Workshop Center, and how much of that work is not only still alive, but thriving and interesting and inspiring to all of us. And so that's really the purpose of our getting together, to remind us, one, of how much has happened, and second of all, of how much needs still to happen. The task is at least as hard that we're facing as the one we faced 60 years ago. And some of you have fantasies about what it was like then. And just a reminder, remind yourself, talk to somebody about what it was really like teaching before we got our act together 50 years ago. And all the things we're moaning about today had their own counterpart 50 years ago. Some of you were brought up on charges at various times. You would have been in the rubber room today, but they had something else then. And I won't ask you to rise if... a number of my honored friends here were... they did their best to destroy them, but it's a special pleasure when I see those people to know that they were undestroyable, indestructible. So I want to honor some of the people, two of the people who have had such an enormous impact on all of us. And I want to start with a friend who... oh, it's closer to me. And if you didn't hear anything I've said up to now, that's okay. It has occasionally happened that at the end of a speech, as I'm walking out, someone said, "It's too bad you didn't have the microphone on. I didn't hear a word you said." And also there are a few people here who have permanently influenced, more powerfully than anything else I ever did as an educator, who now wear sneakers and sandals when they are in public occasions. And, the impact we have on kids is sometimes something as small as that, but it's more powerful than anything else. To be able to walk around and not feel pain in your feet for vanity's sake, I think that's my proudest contribution. One of the heroes of my life proved long before the latest round of reformers that you can run a system of 50,000 kids and 50 or so schools that are true to the idea of parents, teachers, and kids being powerful. And you do it in New York City. And when people tell me that something, we've never proved that you could scale up the kind of schools we believe in, it pains me because, in fact, we did that a long time ago. And I want to introduce the inventor of that in New York City, who got so many of us started in the alternative school division in 1983. Is my right, women? Yeah, 83. Steve Phillips. It's Steve Phillips. Now, another occasion for rising, if you worked in a school that was part of Steve Phillips' little empire, would you stand up and give another round? You didn't know, but we couldn't figure out how to clone him. Because every city in the country, and the average sized city in the country has 50,000 students. So there was nothing, I was about to say there was nothing special about what he did. There's something apparently extraordinary, because everybody else claims it can't be done. And he did it. And there's a lot of people in the audience who did it with him, who were in the alternative school office, and whose notion was, when we called them, not tell us why it couldn't be done, but to help figure out how we could do it. And sometimes they were a little, no, I won't go into that, but he found ways to make it possible for us to really be powerful, not to pretend that we were empowered, but to really run schools along with our colleagues and our families and our students that were powerful places. And I want to thank you, Steve. First I'm going to give you a little gift. This is Toni Morrison's Nobel Lecture of Literature in 1993. And it says inside, "To Steve Phillips, there is no Nobel Prize for Education. In its place, we offer you our 2010 Hero of Education Award in recognition of what you have done to lay the ground, stir our imaginations, and make it possible for us to do this work together. April 17, 2010.
Thank you very much. I have to tell you one funny little story. The second time, not the first time, but the second time Debbie and I met, she said to me, you know, one of the things we have to do is we must never disagree in public. You did say that. I even remember the situation. But anyway, we did that, and I found...
You shouldn't disagree with me.
I never had really to do that. We didn't disagree on very many things. I guess that, number one, there was really nothing very special that I did. I don't think I had a lot of talents in terms of what went on in classrooms and things like that. But one of the things I decided was that if schools were going to achieve their best, somehow they had to be kept free from intrusions from the outside. And to a great degree, what we tried to do was build around our schools the kind of a border that good gardeners put in gardens, knowing that if that border falls down, the place gets taken over by weeds. And it's really the flowers inside the borders that produce everything that needs to be produced. It's just a matter of keeping people out of their way. And I had at one time, very early in the recent history of the Department of Education here in the city, a hope that that lesson had been learned when they, for a very brief moment, set up something called an empowerment zone. And I said, you know, they really have learned from the past, and they have done something that works because we proved that it works. And lo and behold, before the thing ever got established, they dismantled it, and the weeds overran the flower beds. So one of the things that I think is necessary to do is to rethink the whole notion of what enables individual schools to do well. If individual schools do well, the entire system does well. And aiming for improvement at the entire system level doesn't necessarily mean that individual schools will do well. So if there's any lesson to be learned from what we did, that would be it. And Debbie and the folks at Central Park East and the folks here in Julia Richman proved that. They just needed people to get out of the way. Thank you.
Actually, he did slightly more than get out of the way because we had weeds around then, too. And he plucked those weeds from getting in our way. There's about the same period. In fact, just 1 year later, after I met Steve Phillips, I met another great hero of ours who helped the work that's going on in New York City, a man named Ted Sizer. And Ted came to New York to help start Central Park East, and he came every time the chancellor changed, which unfortunately, it used to be very frequently. Unfortunately, it's not the case anymore. He came to New York and met with the new chancellor to say, try to leave, so, you know, probably not to do any harm. And he had the kind of status and style and manner that they took more seriously than they often took you and me. And he did this throughout the country. He was that rare academic hero who also understood schools. And he wrote some wonderful books that should be reread many times today, starting with Horace's Compromise, that inspired a kind of work that was so respectful of young people and of teachers, which, so much written by people who say that teachers shall or will do this and that, as though they're, some kind of mechanism out there that switches are turned on. And he spoke of our work with both with love, affection, and intelligence. And he worked alongside a quite remarkable woman. And I don't know how much credit exactly to give to the fact that she, while he was out there talking about this, she was doing it in her own school. And that's Ted's wife, Nancy Sizer, and would she please come up? Nancy, as most of you know, Nancy's husband Ted died last fall, and but we are not going to let what he stood for die. And to Nancy Sizer, how lovely it is, this thing we have done together. For 25 years, Ted and you walked alongside us in our efforts to transform education in New York City. You supported us, you coached us, you inspired us. In gratitude for your partnership and in honor of Ted's memory, we offer you our 2000 Hero of Education Award, April 17th, 2010. Thank you, Nancy. I'll say a few words here.
Just a couple. I can't say that Debbie and Ted never argued in public. Actually, I don't think, she's a force of nature, let's face it. And he always knew that she knew way more about the topic than he did. And so I think he would have been silly to even start to disagree. But they had some wonderful exchanges, talking with each other and talking over the phone and ending up emailing each other. A wonderful friendship. And we have a wonderful friendship today. He would be the happiest man in this room if he were here, and the most excited. He loved coming back here. We've come here quite a few times. And very proud of everything you're doing in New York City. It's quite an inspiration for us all over the country. So keep up the good work. It's terrific to think that you've started this wonderful new institute, and I'll be there in Indiana next year.